Okay guys, so today I'm going to be discussing the pros and cons of using glass enclosures versus wooden enclosures. So let's get straight into the video. So the first thing I'll be comparing is heating these two different enclosures. As you can see with the glass enclosure, these do tend to have a full mesh top. This means that heat you send in tends to just come straight back out. So if you've got a small vivarium or enclosure, then you can achieve a relatively good temperature gradient even in a quite short enclosure. This is good because it allows thermoregulation for the inhabitants, but it's bad because if you've got a desert species, say a bearded dragon, then you're going to have to make some modifications to allow it to hold the high heat that they require. When it comes to heating, wooden vivs are quite the opposite to glass ones. As you can see, they are very box-like in appearance, and because they're made of wood, they do have great heat retention. This means that if you've got any heating elements in there, they're not going to be on nowhere near as much to keep the viv at the same temperature. So they are great for desert species, and they are good if you've got a cold house and you don't want to spend loads of money on the heating, because it's not going to be on all the time. This does mean that if you've got a small viv, sort of about 2 foot or 3 foot even in some cases, and you need high temperatures in there, then it's just not going to be good enough at making a heat gradient, so you will have to put some extra ventilation in there. Taking a look at the door of the wooden viv, you can see that there are 2 sliding glass panels that are sat in runners. You can very easily open these. You just sort of push them and slide them along, and they're that easy that unless you have a lock, which not all of these vivariums come with, mine did, but most of them don't, then your inhabitants can actually learn to slide these open. So do be wary of that. And also, because there are no handles on these, you can get fingerprints on them, which doesn't look so good, and the runners can easily get filled with substrate unless you check them out often, and that does make them sort of scratch the glass, and then they do become quite difficult to get open. In the case of Enclosures, however, these have a sort of little locking mechanism in every single one of them, like this. You just unlock it like that, and then you can close it. So inhabitants, even if you don't buy the special locks for these, they really cannot get out. You've also got 2 doors which swing open, and you open them via these. You can just pull them and they'll swing open. So you aren't going to get fingerprints on these doors, and your inhabitants aren't going to get out. So these are definitely much better. If you're looking for a large enclosure, then a wooden enclosure is definitely the way to go. Whereas the Enclosures, you can only get them in 3 foot long, 3 foot tall and 1.5 feet deep. The wooden vivariums, you can basically get them in any size you want if you make them yourself. But I know of websites where you can get them at like 10 foot long. So if you're looking for something for a big species, then wooden vivariums are most definitely your best bet. Having mesh tops, you do have to have special canopies for heating and lighting with glass enclosures. As you can see, the thing at the front here, that is a canopy for a UVB bulb. Now, although this has got a reflector in it, you do still have to get stronger UV bulbs to actually have the same UV index inside the vivarium, because the mesh blocks out about half of it. So whereas for a leopard gecko, which this is on, then you'd usually use a 2% bulb. I'm using a 7% bulb just to power the UV through that mesh. So you do have to have sort of canopies on top, which do have wires coming out and don't look that great. And especially for heating, if you've got like a hot ceramic or something, then you don't want it sat on the mesh because it can melt it. So you have to mount them in these large bracket arms that don't look great either. In this respect, wooden enclosures are definitely your best bet. You can very easily install heating and lighting in sort of just very standard fittings inside the enclosures, And these are sort of hidden by the top runner that you have going along here. As soon as I lift you up, you can't see most of the ceramic and you can't really see the UV bulb. So these definitely do make it look a lot nicer, and they are a lot easier to put the elements in. The only real problem with these is if you have an arboreal species or like a gecko or something with the lamellae, then they can definitely climb up and touch the heating and lighting. So if you've got a species like that, make sure that your elements are well guarded. On the contrary to the case with wooden vivariums, glass vivariums are quite good at holding humidity. With the good ventilation, they aren't the best at holding humidity, but you can put stuff over the mesh to decrease ventilation. Obviously you won't have some in there or the air will end up going stagnant, but just because the glass, they can withstand humidity, like you can get water on them and they're not going to rot. This means that they are great for species which need fluctuations in humidity, like the crested gecko you're seeing on screen right now. And the last point I'll be touching on is the price of these enclosures. Glass enclosures are quite expensive for the size of them. You can get a 45 by 45 by 60 tall centimetre Exoterra for about £100. Whereas for £70 I got this 4 foot long by just above a foot deep and just above a foot tall wooden enclosure. So these are by far the best value for money in terms of size. So overall, I do think that these enclosures have different places in the market. The glass ones are good if you want a high temperature species that's only very small, so you can still get that temperature gradient. And they're also good for higher humidity species, whereas the wooden enclosures are better for large species that don't require so much humidity. So if you are getting into reptiles and you're wondering which one's the best for you, I hope that this video has helped you make that decision. And if you did like it, then please give it a like. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.